Hey y'all, I've been asked a lot in co-op how do I build characters. Since I'm bored, what I do, I go to lower level AR worlds to help them out, especially if they DM me. And well, most of them be asking me how I do so much damage. Everyone wants to do more damage in Genshin Impact. So, this is just a guide to get you up and going.
Wherever in this world I roam.
Yes, Kazo. So, when you first started off in Genshin Impact, you'll have characters like Barbara, Amber, Kaya. These are the staple characters in the game that you have. What I recommend is that you start leveling them up. It's a no-brainer. You level them up as high as you could go for the AR that you are. Level up your weapons that you use on them, and level up the talents. Now, if you get artifacts on the way, it wouldn't be anything special. It might be, if I have any, like these, you might get like artifacts like these. Just equip what you have, right? So the 5 artifacts that you have in this game is flower, that's this, the plume or the feather, the sands, the goblet or the cup. Some people call it the cup. And, well, I call it the headpiece, right? But it's called the circlet. So, when you get around AR 45, that's where you should start farming artifacts. And why is that? Is because if you see the artifacts that you get here, no, this is talents. The artifacts that you get here at AR 45 will be these, right? The gold ones, the 5 stars. These are the most resin efficient. These are the ones that you should be farming for. But if you decide to farm a little earlier and you get artifacts like these, right? These are the 4 star. Well, you could use them still, right? So let's say that you just pulled, alright, I'm gonna look for someone simple. Let's say you get Shangling, right? I recommend everyone to build her, right? So let's say you get her up to AR level 80. I recommend you to ascend your character past level 80 if you're maining them, right? So I'm maining Yoimiya. So after you send them, it'll be like this to level them up to 90. And your supports, you could keep them at 80. Or just characters that they are still strong at level 80, unascended. If you truly love the character, you could ascend them past 80. Most of my main DPSs, they are ascended past 80. Right. So let's say you got Shangling, right? You ascend her to 80. You equip a weapon. I recommend a catch. If you're free to play, you could get this to R5. Alright, so if you're gonna build them and you level up the character, you got your artifacts ready, you got talents, all good. My jungling at this is what I use for my jungling, and it's perfectly fine because I don't really use her that much. So if you want to build her, this applies for this a universal build, right? So she's a pyro unit. Most people will farm the Crimson Witch domain for pyro units, and that is this domain here, right? This is for your Hutaos, this is for your Zhanglings, this is for any pyro character. But it is not resin efficient. And I always recommend people to go, if you have Inazuma unlocked, to come here and farm this domain. Because this could work in Zhangling, Beidou, Xingshu. A lot of characters could benefit from this. And also you have this piece. Now this piece is the equivalent of a gladiator, a 2-piece gladiator. So you could farm 2 pieces of this and 2 pieces of this to get you going, right? It's just quick and easy, resin efficient. So let's say you want to build your Zhangling, right? You get the flower and the plume. Now these, the main stats is always HP in these, right? The feather is always attack, right? So you equip flower and feather with HP and attack. Now your sands, this is where people start getting confused on what to use here, right? So most people would use attack. There's attack sans, there's elemental mastery, and there are energy recharge. Where is it? Energy recharge, right? So most of the time, most people, this is what they do. They put HP for the, HP is flower, attack for sans, attack or ER, energy recharge for short, for the sans, and the goblet is always a elemental damage goblet. So if you're pyro, you use a pyro goblet. If you're hydro, you use hydro. If you're cryo, you use cryo, right? But most people won't really have the goblet as yet, so I recommend them use our attack. You can use our attack for now until you get a good goblet. And for the circlet, it's always recommended to use crit rate or crit damage depending on your build, and I'll get into the build real quick now. So this is what crit rate and crit damage is, right? These two stats here. A simple term is that more crit damage you have is more damage that you do, right? But it doesn't mean that you should just stack a ton of crit damage on your character. Let's say my Yoimiya has 82, 185. You know, a lot of people would want to carry this up to like this here and get the crit damage to as high as possible. But you see, the crit rate is a lot lower. So what the crit rate is, it's like a proc, right? It's basically a proc. So you have 50, so my Xiangling has 57 crit rate, 137 crit damage. She has a 57% chance to proc the 132%, extra damage on the attack. So the quickest way to get some damage done is I recommend to get your crit rate around 50 if you're now starting off, and your crit damage around 100. It's not really that difficult because all characters start with 50 crit damage and 5 crit rate. So when you're farming artifacts, most people just tend to go for crit rate, crit damage, crit rate, crit damage, right? You could start doing that for now, right? It's all about the balance. That's to get the most amount of damage out. Never neglect energy recharge on your character. That's a very important stat, especially for characters like Xiangling, where they use their burst. More energy recharge you have is the quicker you could build up your burst. So my Xiangling has 210 energy recharge. That means she gets her ER back a lot quicker. 57 crit rate, 137 crit damage. And to me, that's a very good build, a balanced build. To be honest, you don't have to max out every character possible. That I see a lot of streamers do. They get like unbelievable stats, and they spend money to get resins, but resin is not something very cheap in this game. So I recommend getting most of your characters to 50 crit rate, 100 crit damage, and you can start building from there. You can start getting more crit damage, more crit rate, depending on how much resin you spend in the domains and the artifacts that you get. Now the artifacts are all RNG. Basically, it's a gamble too. You're not certain to get any good stats on these things. Sometimes you might get a defense piece, a HP piece. Sometimes you get a really good attack piece and you won't get any of these stats here. Like, let's say this. Well, this has crit rate. This has some crit damage. So when you start getting the artifacts, then you gotta start leveling them up. So, always, if you get a good piece and you want to use it, or you're just working with what you have, and it falls into the criteria of the character, in which attack or energy recharge, pyro for Xiangling, or the element for the character, and crit rate, crit damage for the headpiece, right? Always level them up to the max that they could go. For the 4-star artifacts, the max they could go is level 16. For the 5 stars, it goes up to level 20. So if you get a really good piece, you could level it up as high as you could go. As you see, like for my Ito here, the 4 stars are still usable, and because the game is not difficult. Another way to make your characters very easy to build early on to balance off the stat is using crit rate or crit damage weapons. Like my Zhao here, he's using a Primordial Jade Ring Spear, right? This has 22% crit rate. So off the bat right there, your character has a 22% chance extra to proc the crit damage. So if I change this here, you could see that my Xiangling is 79, 137. The stats is a lot better. You know, you could use, if you have, use what you have for now and what's comfortable for you. Some characters don't need that much crit damage, but you know, it's always good to have a balanced ratio of 1 to 2. That's a lot of people preach is 50 crit rate, 100 crit damage, 60 crit rate, 120. But you know, it comes to a point where it doesn't really matter at a certain degree, because let's say your character has, let me see, 220 crit rate, 80% crit damage. It's not 1 to 2, but the max crit rate you could get is 100%. So I recommend around, if you could get 50 to 80, that's around good. That's good. So I'm going to demonstrate this now. Let's say I have an unleveled Kaching, right?
Let's go.
If I'm going to build Kaching, she'll build just like any other character. So I'm going to look for a flower, a plume, attack or ER sans. I'll look for a Electro Goblet, Electro Cup, crit rate or crit damage, circlet. So I'm just going to show you my damage right now with Kaching. She's not really leveled up right now. So I'm going to equip a weapon on her, and I'll use, let's say, a free-to-play. You get the Anemo Kagouchi. You could get this in, it's a craftable in Inazuma. Right? So let's say you get your weapon, you get some talents up. Well, my talent is 1. I don't use her. Right? So you level up as much as you could. You get your talents up. That's these here. You get these talents, material, and domains. And let's say this is your build for now. This is your basic Kaching build that you don't know anything about artifacts, and I'll show you the impact with and without. Alright, so this is my Kaching build. Well, it's not a build. Right, so off the bat she has 10 crit rate, 77 crit damage, because she ascends with crit damage. Some characters ascend with crit rate or crit damage, so it's a lot easier to build a character. Right? So she has some crit rate from this, right? So she has nothing on. So I'm going to show you the difference with and without artifacts. Right, so most likely this is what your character will be doing, right? This is the damage.
Nowhere to hide.
You see, it's just in the hundreds for now. Right? Alright, so this is if I was going to build Kaching. Right, so you start with the flower, look for some with crit rate, crit damage. I'm just going to get any random piece, right? So I'll use, let's say you've been farming the domain that I showed you with this piece and this piece, right? So I'm going to look for something with some crit rate to start off with, right? She already have an electro piece here. I'll look for attack sans, so I'll use this, right? And then I'll use some, let's say you get this and you get this, right? So the build right now is 57, 131, right? So let me go and see the damage difference now. Right, so
Stronger than I thought.
see, the damage is up a lot more now.
Speed of light. With sword comes shadow.
So now the damage is up in the thousands, right?
Rebuild.
Now she would be doing a lot more damage if she was ascended and her talents were up. But this is basically talent 1s with some artifacts, right? That's basically the basics on how people build characters. I recommend you to get to area 45 before you start farming these artifacts, you know, to get some of these goals. But I said, if you get some of these 4 stars, you can still use them once it has the proper stats on them. If you really don't have any proper stats, just use what you have for now until you get better, because trust me, you're gonna take months to get something. It might take you like a month to get like 1 good artifact in this game. That's how crazy it is. Sometimes in the first day you might get everything for the character. It might take you 6 months. So that's basically how to build basic characters. And you could apply this for any other character in the game. There are some characters that use different things, like let's say you have Ito, right? where you will use, where's my Ito? Where you will use attack or ER on other characters, you will use defense because he scales off defense. You always look at their kit or just look for a review to find out what they really scale on. If you have a Hu Tao, this is how you build your Hu Tao. I have 73, 183. Using Dragon's Bane R5, this is the second best in slot. It's right below the Staff of Homer. And, well, you see, most people will go for 4-piece Crimson Witch here. I went for 4-piece Shimenawa because Hu Tao does charge attacks. And the 4-piece Shimenawas, although it takes away 15 energy from her, it increases her charge attack damage by 50%. And most of the time I don't really use her burst, and you get back her burst while you're charge attacking, so you could use it too. So let's say you have a Hu Tao. I know one of my friends, she has a Hu Tao and doesn't really know how to build her. So I have HP with crit rate, crit damage, attack, crit rate, crit damage. Now Hu Tao, you could use 2 different suns. She could use the HP suns, like these, or she could use the EM suns. So I'm using EM right now because after all these months I haven't gotten one good HP sun, and to tell you the truth, EM does sometimes even more damage. I use EM, Pyro Goblet, and I use a crit rate headpiece circlet. So that's basically my Hu Tao build. You could apply this for Klee, you could apply this for, as you see, it's basically like Zhangling, but with different artifact sets. So I won't get into artifact sets and which character uses them, but depending on the element, you could just look at the artifact set domain and it'll tell you. So let's say your character is Hydro. You come here and you can see that this one is for Cryo, this one is for Hydro. It is common sense. So yeah, so I'm not sure if this was simple enough for anyone to understand, but that's basically how to build your characters. You get them to the highest level you can, you get them to the highest level that you're comfortable with. Like most of my main DPSs is level 80 once they're ascended. You level up the weapon. If you have a crit rate or crit damage weapon, it'll be easier to build in the beginning. And you level up your artifacts with good stats. Constellation, that's you're buying the character. And you level up the talents, right? You get a good ratio of 50 to 100, 75 to, well, between 50 to 80 I think is a good sweet spot. And to tell you the truth, don't focus too much on crit damage. Around 120 to 150 is good enough to clear Spiral Abyss, which is the hardest content in this game. Alright, so everyone, I hope this was simple enough for some of you to understand. You could drop a comment if you need some help. I'll try to explain it as best as I can. I hope this was helpful to you. And wish you the best of luck in farming artifacts. It's gonna be a pain. So enjoy the game, be safe, have a great day. Everyone, take care.